You have kind of the classic typo squatting, right? So you have red Sift with two D's, or maybe it's missing an F, right? One character difference, one character added, one character dropped. It's a whole new domain. You've got different TLDs on a country level. You have this term called script spoofing, right? So in this example, there's an L instead of an I. It could be a 1, right? All it takes is really one character difference, and it's a whole new domain, but it looks a lot like, your domain, your brand. And, typically an IT organization, InfoSec organization is going to have some sort of process on purchasing, defensively purchasing lookalike domains, registering them. But the reality is that that doesn't scale. Sometimes these processes are tracked in a spreadsheet. It gets expensive, right? You can't just buy every domain, especially when you start factoring in, all these different TLDs and the typos, et cetera. So really what you need a scalable solution that's going to be automated and really built on AI and machine learning to help identify these lookalike domains so that you can protect really your overall, domain perimeter, but improve your overall, cybersecurity posture. So let's talk a little bit more about the techniques in regards to domain impersonation, right? So we talked about the different TLDs and typos, but what about like once a domain is registered, what's happening after that? So one thing that's really common these days is, seeing SSL or HTTPS deployed on a website, landing page microsite, right? I can remember, being an intern in 2012 and being responsible for deploying SSL certificates and having to stack a CSR bundle in a certain way. And it was quite the process. Now a few clicks, you can, deploy SSL certificates, and, the common user of browsing a website sees the lockbox in the address bar, right? So it must be legitimate, right? I mean, these are tactics that bad actors, cyber criminals are using. The other thing that's really common is terms of, copying or ripping off the exact content, right? So cyber criminals using your brand logos, using your exact font, color schema, really just full on impersonation of the brand. I mean, pretty much mirroring everything that would be on a legitimate website. And the other that's really common is, these lookalike websites and, even emails or landing pages. I mean, they're responsively designed. They look good. They're going to look good across all different browsers. They're going to look sharp on, mobile, right? I mean, the days of kind of broken looking websites are over. It's so easy to, really have a good looking site. I've even seen examples where bad actors have, respectively better looking sites than, the brand itself, right? So these things are all common. These are things that we're, up against when we talk about this impersonation techniques. All right, so let's pivot into, more of the news here. Really, there's, since I joined Sift, I've, pivoted more into looking more at cyber criminal and cyber activity things, right? So one particular article that was posted in June for, really an ongoing phishing attack, I found really interesting because it really ties into where Sift OnDOMAIN, could have absolutely helped these brands, right? So in June, there were 6,000 sites impersonating, just around 100 brands. And these were really well-known brands, right? It was different popular apparel, footwear, clothing. In this screenshot I took from the report, you have Puma, a couple things going on here, right? I mean, it's definitely a nice looking page. I'm pointing over here to, the domain, a lookalike domain. It's puma-italia.com, right? We talked about how easy it is to have the lookalike. The page itself, yeah, it looks great. Pretty nice pair of kicks here. The product is even real. The products underneath are real. The prices are probably, relatively close or exactly what they were, right? Looks like a really great website. And, what the bad actors, the cyber criminals want to do is, trick victims into logging into this fake page. And sure, there could be some monetary, gain from a cyber criminal for, getting your Puma, your Nike credentials, but it goes a lot deeper than that, right? Once credentials are harvested, especially at scale, the bad actor can start trying to see, well, maybe this is the same username and password for an email, for your bank, for your SSO login at work, right? In a perfect world, we have different passwords for everything. We never mix personal and business together, but it absolutely happens. And these are things that can lead to data breaches. And data breaches are expensive, right? I mean, these are things that bad actors have pretty well thought out plans on what they're trying to accomplish here. Peeling back the layers a little bit more in this particular report. So I found this really interesting. So there's this concept called domain aging. And with this same report, the 6,000 sites, 100 brands or so, what was found on a domain registration level, a lot of the domains were registered within 90 days and going back to 2 years old, right? So this means the cyber criminal organization didn't just buy some domains over the weekend and stand up some websites on Monday and call it a day, right? I mean, this is a really sophisticated and well-orchestrated attack. And what happens with this domain aging is, Google search is trying to do its job. It's indexing them, right? And now they've been around for a while. The search results can, be ranked higher. And I took this screenshot from the report. This is someone, Googling Clark, South Africa. And on the first page of Google, 4 million something hits, but in a half a second, you have, Clark, South Africa.co.za, right? And you think of the average user. I mean, everyone probably on this webinar is pretty technically savvy in one way or another, right? You think about your average, visitor that's Googling something, coming across the page. Okay, it's in Google. It's the first thing in Google. Maybe they saw HTTPS, right? It looks good. I mean, these are the things that they're up against. And yeah, anyone that's not really suspecting that there's anything nefarious going on, it's like, okay, first thing page in Google, it's got to be legitimate. And that's really how, sophisticated things can get. All right. One more slide before we get into the actual demo. So just a quick overview of, OnDOMAIN, right? It's one of our products. It's through and through a lookalike domains defense product. And, we have a slogan of protect your domain by disarming lookalike domains on day zero. So what does that mean, right? The automation and AI that this, platform is built on is really able to detect these lookalike domains, pretty soon after they're registered. And we'll look at some stats on that. Ultimately, what we break this, concept down is to 3 pillars. We have uncover, right? So let's find and identify those lookalike domains. Are any of those lookalike domains also using your logo, right? We have this really cool logo engine that we'll look at to basically pair up a lookalike domain that is also already using your logo, which of course is, for some malicious or nefarious reasons. And then there's the investigate perspective, right? The sheer amount of metadata we have on these lookalike domains is it's super intriguing. It's, when was it registered, but where are the name servers pointed to? Where is it hosted? Is there a different hosting provider on the website versus the registrar, right? Is it sending email? Are there DNS records existing today that indicate a website or landing page is going to be stood up, right? Are there A records? Is it ready to send email? Can it receive email? Does it have a DMARC record, right? I mean, it's really an endless amount of data, and we'll look at that in the platform. And then really the final step is we do offer an integrated takedown service in our platform. So, not sure if anyone on the, session today has dealt with site takedowns in the past. You've got to work with your legal team. You've got to contact the registrar, the hosting provider. Sometimes it's not in the US, it's in different countries, which makes it even harder to take down, right? I mean, these are things that we've thought of, and we're able to compile a lot of evidence, using the platform to basically go up to bat to get these malicious sites taken down. All right, so let's pivot out of the deck, get into the platform here. So a few things. So right now I'm just on our domains page. These are domains that, I've added to this demo account. So these are some of Redsift's domains. They're not all of them, but we're saying, hey, we own these domains. So by adding these domains here, we're kicking off the lookalike engine to start looking, scanning the web for anything that looks like this. So we'll get to those lookalike domains in a second. The other important, aspect in terms of just talking about configuration is we have our logo engine, right? So what happens is when you upload a logo, and in this example, Redsift is just one brand, but we do have multiple logos, right? They're completely different, but we're training the logo engine to look for these logos to appear on any lookalike sites. And really, we're skipping some steps here on your behalf to show you if any of the existing lookalike sites are already using your logo, which is, of course, going to be up to some, nefarious actions of some sort. I want to talk about scale real quick before we look at some of the particular lookalike domains. And I'm just going to scroll down here. We have this chart that is just showing, how many new hosts or domains that we've observed globally, even in the last 24 hours, right? So, I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of domains being registered, all the time. And these are things that when we talk about scale of, defensively buying domains or, trying to buy every lookalike domain, right? It's just infinite, right? You think back to a couple of slides ago with the different TLDs and the typos, right? I mean, that's really what you're up against. All right, so the lookalikes themselves. So we do a couple things for you. There's opportunity where there's, domains that have been spotted out in the wild, right? And even since, yesterday looking at this data, right? I mean, there's more domains that have been added today in the last few hours, right? And that really goes back to the scale and importance of automation, right? You need to have a solution that's going to be looking at this stuff around the clock. So these are unclassified domains, meaning, the platform has found them, but the end user, right, which is me in this case, hasn't gone to classify anything to mark them at, certain risk levels or actually saying, hey, this is my domain. So we'd add that over to the first screen we looked at. And then there's the takedown aspect. So once you start tagging some of these, you're really training the model, and you're telling OnDOMAIN to, be smart, even smarter than it already is in terms of classifying the domains. So we look at some of the low risk ones, right? These are those different country level TLDs for the most part, different TLD for .dev. So the platform's saying, hey, these are things that, you might want to look out for. It's absolutely possible that actually we own all these domains. So I can say, OnDOMAIN, those are mine. They are different TLDs, but I own them. And they'd appear on that other domains tab we first looked at. But the high risk stuff is what's super interesting, right? So let's take a look at a few examples. So I'm going to just zoom in here and look at this first one because it's really interesting. So there's a few things going on here. You have red Sift, right? So we got a typo, and then we got a hyphen, and then we have Okta in there, right? Attempting some sort of SSO, page recreation. But what's really interesting is this is the root domain. So ae.org is the root domain. The red Sift with the typo is a subdomain, right? So think about that. The bad actor has basically created a subdomain of a completely different root level domain, but look how, close that is to, the red Sift domain itself, right? So, we'll basically put some risk rating on there. There's a ton of different metadata that you can, scroll through. There's a lot of columns. I'm not going to go through each one, but you can see where these domains are hosted, and that's absolutely really important. So we can click in here to take a little bit, more look at the metadata. So, it's showing us where the differences are when it was last scanned. But this is what's really cool. So OnDOMAIN is telling us, hey, this particular domain is web ready. So what does that mean? Well, it has name servers, right? So, it's properly hosted on a DNS level to, resolve. It also has an A record, which is usually, used for hosting a website or a landing page. On an email level, it also is ready to send email. It has an SPF record, and it can receive email. And a really cool feature, a lot of folks are probably, email focused, right? And we talked about what DMARC does and doesn't do. But on the lookalike level, what we also have is the opportunity to detect if the emails have actually been sent. So there was nothing nefarious going on with this, but I did take a general screenshot to show you, what we have, because we have a trap network baked in, Honeypot's trap network baked into the solution, where if a lookalike domain is sending mail, we can actually see if it's hitting traps to see what the content of that is on a subject line level, right? Nothing sensitive, but it's just a cool feature that really ties into, okay, DMARC's not going to stop this type of thing because it's not your domain, but if your domain is being used nefariously, we can see that. There's also the, screenshot. I'm going to go back here because there's a better example of this domain. Let's get back to activity, go to high risk. Check this one out. So this one, right, it's redsif-octa.com. So same applies, right? We can see it's web ready, but there's a couple things going on here where we've actually have a screenshot of the website, and here's our logo, right, being hosted on this particular website. There's also the slogan, one of our slogans at RedSift, but ultimately this is an example of something that it's trying to look like an Okta page, and it's probably something that we're going to want to look closer at, but ultimately move into a takedown status where we can start compiling the evidence to take that particular domain down. So we'll look at just one more domain under our high risk. So again, right, we got RedSif with the typo, and then there's redsif-octa.com. So same applies. We see that this is also, web ready. This can, receive emails. It actually doesn't say it can detect, send emails, but let's take a look at the page itself, right? So in this example, we don't see the RedSift logo here, but there is an Okta logo, and it is prompting, SSO login, right? Username and clicking login, right? I mean, these are things that are absolutely happening out in the wild. And, we talked about actual cyber criminal things that have gone on before, like as in the news and things like that. A couple summers ago, there was an organization called Octopus that impersonated Okta pages and compromised hundreds of technology companies, right? And this is something where RedSift OnDOMAIN could have absolutely, made an impact. And there's some pretty serious brands in here, again, just public information. But, I chose to highlight some of the, lookalikes on an Okta level because, this is something that you do want to shut down on day zero, right? It's not anything that you want to have these particular, domains live longer than they need to, right? So we move this particular one to takedown. So I'll show you what that looks like quickly. We're kind of getting on time here, so we'll get to questions shortly. But again, to recap, with takedowns, right? If you've ever dealt with them, it's a pain. You got to loop in legal. You got to jump through all these hoops. Contacting different domain registrars and hosting providers across the planet is super tough. As things get hosted internationally in different parts of the world, there's language barriers. It becomes harder and more, some of these hosting and registrars are more sophisticated. But really what we offer is an easy way to compile the evidence, type in the supporting notes. Maybe there was some emails sent and we had headers, right? We can upload that. The whole goal is to have as much data as possible to get that, takedown initiated, right? And we've seen takedowns take, from a few days to, a little bit longer, maybe 5 days, but it's ultimately dependent on the sophistication of the hosting. But again, we're streamlining this process for you. I mean, we don't want any nefarious activity to happen, but it absolutely does. And I think the kind of the last thing I'll say here quickly is, sometimes there's this common misconception of my brand's not big enough to be, impersonated. And it's a little bit like, well, my neighborhood's safe, so I'm not going to lock my door and I'm going to wait till it gets broken into to install the security system, right? It's like proactive is key. It's a lot different conversation when a prospective customer is already being impersonated and there's something live going on that needs to be taken down versus having this solution in place to scan accordingly and alert you in, near real time when any nefarious activity is happening, right? So I think proactive is key. I mean, you don't need to be a massive hedge fund company that has a lot of risk of this type of thing and is targeted to have value out of OnDOMAIN. I think it's really applicable across any industry for any size company. Cool. Let me stop sharing my screen here, and we'll get over to some Q&A.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that, Tom. That was really insightful around really hammering home the idea that you can be impersonated whatever size company. There's risks to whatever industry you're in. And unfortunately, we probably all on the call here know too well that how easy it is to spin up a website and send those emails, those threats out to the public. So we had an audience question around the risk level. So Tom, the question was, what happens if something is classified as low risk, but then the metrics on it change, potentially making it a high risk? Will its classification auto-update, or what happens there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the main differences between low and high risk. So with low risk, we are transparently scanning and looking at that less often than something that is at high risk, right? Where we're looking at it more often to see if there's DNS changes. So, to answer the correct question, directly, if it's low risk and then we're seeing, A records being now present in the DNS, right? These are all things that can be alerted. So there's alerting in the platform where maybe I'll just reshare my screen quickly. I set up some basic alerts where I can be notified on the takedown level, but if a new domain came in, or if our platform says, hey, these things have happened in the DNS, we're going to escalate that risk, level, right? So know that we are looking at the data and what's happening in the platform, and we'll auto reclassify, that risk on your behalf.
And around the takedown process, there's been some questions around, once a domain has been taken down, is it then available to purchase, for example, a competitor or person with the original malicious intent?
Okay, so the answer is it depends. It depends on the registrar. So when a takedown is initiated and successful, sometimes the registrar will sit on that domain for a certain period of time. Other times, they keep it. Ultimately, domains can be released out in the wild, and usually at some point that will happen. That's going to be probably a good example of when it is important to actually, defensively buy that domain, right? It wouldn't be a good look if you had to, get that site taken down and 6 months later, so someone rebuys it and the same thing happens. So yeah, it does depend on the registrar, but at some point those will be released back in the wild.
Yeah. And going back to the logo detection work, it was very interesting to see the Redshift logo being impersonated, the messaging of CSolve Secure, and then you've got another type of attack with the Okta login. So around logo detection, is there a high false positive rate for logo detection? And does this depend on the sort of format of the logo that you would upload into the platform?
Yeah, the high false positive rate is definitely on the lower side of things, so long as we prefer SVG files, high res, making sure things aren't blurry, using that class functionality to have, in my example, I had the Redshift logo, but there was, same brand, 2 different logos, right? So making sure that you have the different versions of your logos available. And then, it's usually 2 to 3 days for the logo to be trained, in terms of the model. But as you use the platform and you mark different things as this is your domain, this is high risk, low risk, right? I mean, the brand assets is also getting smarter on that level.
No, absolutely. And then I think our final question around alerting. So you spoke about how it's important to be proactive and have live notifications coming through so that you can be quick to react to anything that comes through. So how does the platform notify you? What are some of the formats in which you can receive notifications?
Yeah, you can set up email notifications. This is helpful to look at really quick. So, this is just me sending alerts to myself through the platform, but, detected new logos. So on a channel level, you got email. You can also set up a Slack integration. I should also mention, there's endpoints on an API level for OnDOMAIN, right? We have customers that have literally thousands of domains, hundreds of brands. Logging into the front end of the platform or just getting email notifications isn't always going to be the most scalable way, right? So there's other ways to get that data out of. But yeah, email and Slack are definitely widely used on a notifications level.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, we've had, I'll give it, I'll allow it for time. I know we want to leave a 30-minute question time. So we've probably got time for one more question. But if you do have other questions that we haven't been able to answer, there will be follow-up. So we've got one come through saying, are takedown efforts included in the platform cost, or are they additional fees associated with these? And then there's a question of who do we reach out to for more information? So the second question on the reaching out for information, that you will receive a follow-up email with a recording of this. And there will be a email address in which you can inquire about getting a demo or further information around our pricing model. But Tom, I'll hand it over to you for the costs of the takedown efforts.
Takedowns are incremental costs. Sometimes customers who are just highly targeted and have dealt with takedowns in the past, with or without Redshift, they will pre-buy, some of these takedowns at, a slightly cheaper cost. But yeah, there is an incremental cost to actually, initiating the takedown itself.
Well, okay. So like I said, I'm going to wrap it up there. I'd like to thank Tom Emilia for his fantastic insight into the product there. As stated, there will be a recording available shortly via email. And I believe we'll hope to get the slides over as well, so you can look at the details in more detail. But thank you for attending. This is an Espresso demo series. We do like to do these on a monthly basis. So do keep your eyes peeled for the next one. And we hope to see you soon. Fab. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.